Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how we made our dream game look and feel amazing over the last 2 weeks. For those that don't know, I'm Brandon. I quit my full-time job and sold my house to fund my dream of being a full-time game developer. Together with my wife Nikki, we're working hard on Veil of Maya, an emotional-driven 2D Metroidvania about a warrior monk and a world consumed by fear. Welcome to our channel. Let's get right into it. So we realized a few key ingredients have been missing from our game, and one of those key ingredients is atmosphere. What you're seeing here is a test scene for Witchwood Forest. Yes, there are trees and other various vegetation assets might help sell it better, but it still doesn't feel like the dark, mysterious, mystical feeling forest that I had pictured in my mind. So let me show you how we fixed that. I started with lighting. We used a 2D renderer, which allowed me to use 2D lights specifically designed to affect sprites. I added a global light to the foreground layer, which is needed to make sure that everything isn't just black. And I also added one to the background layer. And you can see I'm using a super dark color for the lights, but look how much the scene changes just by changing the color of the lights in the background. It gives you a lot of control over the mood of the scene. I also added 2 different light sources to the player. I really just love how this looks, but it also helps keep the background very distinct from the foreground so that the player always knows where they can and cannot walk. Once that was done, it was time to liven up the forest with some particles. We started with dust, one on the main layer and one in the background layer. And this gives some feeling of depth and adds to that really nice parallax effect that I like so much. Nothing special, just clean, partly transparent circles. Next, most of the trees in the scene are bare with only a few remaining leaves. So to make this make sense, I added some falling leaf particles. I placed one random sprite at a random size and rotation and used some noise on the x-axis to give it that nice gentle swaying back and forth to simulate falling leaves. Next, I added some simple fireflies into the scene. They float around randomly, and one cool thing to note is the changes to their size over lifetime to make them blink a couple of times before fading away. I've seen a few fireflies and they do blink a lot, so I'm glad that I managed to simulate that so easily. To get these to really pop though, I needed some bloom to get that nice glow effect around the fireflies, and you can really see the difference that this makes. I just hope I didn't overdo it. I also added a vignette to the scene to add a bit more mood to the atmosphere. Next, I wanted some fog to help give the forest more of that gloomy look that I was going for. And I did a few different things here. If you look at any landscape in real life, you see that everything gets more washed out the further it is. This simulates that. And I just gradually increase intensity on each layer the further back that it goes. Next, I added some rolling fog to the foreground layer to give it a more realistic level of detail. Here it is by itself, pretty simple stuff. And when added in, it's fairly subtle, but it does have movement, which I really like. I also added one more layer of slightly more obvious fog to really liven things up and tie it all together. And finally, some wind. I had a few issues at first with getting the settings right, as you maybe see. I don't know, it's subtle, but if you look really close, you can see the trees moving a little more than they probably should. Got it working well enough in the end though. You can see all the trees now have a nice sway to them. Not too much, just enough to simulate some gentle wind. It was a lot of subtle elements that when they all come together can bring a scene from looking like this to this. If you like these changes, be sure to subscribe for a new devlog every 2 weeks. It really helps us out and we appreciate it. All right, on to the next thing that's really been irking me about our game, and that's the feel of the attack. It sucks. More accurately, it sucked. Past tense. Let me show you how we really got the player's melee attack feeling awesome in just 47 easy steps. Seriously though, it did take some doing. One reason being, I didn't actually know what was wrong, just that the attack felt off. And and needed some tweaking. I went down some pretty deep rabbit holes on Reddit on this topic. I played and I studied other video games and finally came up with a cluster list of things to do to improve the feel and juice behind the attack. Here's what I did. I started by adjusting that crisscross slash effect. It was there before, but it was way too subtle. So I thickened them up, brightened them, and gave them some slight movement. I added some small particles around the enemy as well. It's really subtle, almost like some dust or sweat flying off the enemy when they're hit, but I noticed it when it wasn't there. Next, I remade the hit particles that were already there. Before, they were a bit boring and just kind of sprinkled out the top of the enemy, and now I changed it so that the particles fly out in the direction of the attack at a really nice high velocity. That's accomplished with this little line of code, by the way, and I'm embarrassed to say that it took me a couple of hours to figure out how to do this properly. Now, moving on from the particles. Psych, just kidding, I'm actually not done yet. I added these particles that collide with the ground. They also shoot out in the attack direction. It really gives it that sense that the enemy is losing something with each hit, which obviously they are, health. It still wasn't feeling right to me though, so I kept going. I added a second slash effect. They're thinner and longer, and they don't stay on screen for nearly as long as the other ones. Let me know in the comments if you think this is overkill or if it's better, but honestly, I really like it. And now we're getting to the really good stuff. Nikki has been busy recoloring all of O2's animation frames by hand. Now that we have a color palette, O2 needed to be changed. You might see a mishmash of O2's colors rapidly changing in some of these clips, and that's because I was implementing each new animation as they were being created. But because Nikki was already redoing animations, I told her we needed a new attack animation. And here's the before and after. The new animation is much more punchy and has a lot more movement going on. It's feeling much better at this point. Next, I wanted to have some dynamic camera shake, and this was not easy to figure out and took several hours of research and experimentation to figure it out. But you can see the end result here. The camera jolts in the direction of O2's attack, almost as if the force of O2's attack pushes the camera away. And finally, some enemy knockback. Maybe a little less knockback, something more like this. You'd think that would be enough. It definitely looks better at this point, but something still felt off when I played. And I no longer liked the slash effect for the staff either, so we updated that as well. The old one was 4 frames, and this one was only 2, which gives it much more punch. And finally, I had my eureka moment. One last change that made everything feel powerful. And it was actually a problem in the code with how damage was being applied in the first place. See, in order to deal damage, I cast an invisible circle that matches the size of the slash effect. The problem was, I was casting this damage zone in front of the player from the moment they pressed the attack button, and it only disappeared when the slash effect disappeared. And this could cause the player to deal damage even when O2 was just winding up for his attack. It happened so fast I didn't even notice until I changed it. Now, when you attack, damage is only dealt on the exact frame that the slash effect is on screen. And finally, the attack felt powerful, impactful, and good to use. Who knows, maybe one of you guys could have helped me figure this out way sooner. I read all of my comments, but I wanted a better way of connecting with you guys, so we have launched a new Discord server. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in joining our Discord community. We'd love to have you. We tied up a few loose ends as well. We finished the blessing system, which we covered in our last video. Our icons were placeholders from the Unity asset store, so Nikki drew up some designs, and now they are all in there and it's looking great. And in order to really finalize this system, since it relies on the player collecting runes in the game, we made an actual rune game object that can be collected and properly adds to the player's rune count. This allows you to, over time, be able to equip more and more blessings as you explore the world and unlock more and more of its secrets. We also published our first development blog. We really want to focus heavily on YouTube, so those will only be written quarterly, but it's a really fun way to look back and see several months of progress all in one small space, and I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. Also, I want to announce that we will soon soon be releasing a 6-part mini-series. We'll be playing other indie games and talking about what we as developers liked, learned, and what lessons we can take away from each game. That will be coming out bi-weekly as well on the opposite Friday from our Devlog series. Stay tuned for that. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We really appreciate it.